All right. So the Wizard, and I'm not going to tell you who the Wizard is. I'm just going to name him the Wizard because it's an inside joke. But the Wizard is the same gentleman who told me that Washington and Oregon had mitigated certain factors in getting into the Big Ten. And this was told to me, I think, almost a year before they got into the Big Ten, that they had been working on this thing during an NFL draft party of all things. We were watching the draft, and he let this slip to me. But God bless the craft beer in Ohio for that. Thank you. Cheers. But he let me know. I asked him. I came out and asked him. I said, listen, this is what Greg is telling me. So Greg is telling everybody that Ohio State now has the votes to control realignment, and these are the schools that they're interested in: Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia Tech, Miami, and Stanford. And I said, is that correct? And he said, well, you would have to check with the president of Ohio State University to find out if it's 100% correct, but that sounds right. Ohio State is not going to favor any West Coast editions. The only West Coast edition they would favor is Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
Reason being, it's not John Canzano. I don't know John Canzano, but he seems like an okay dude. They're not going to favor any West Coast teams because of what USC did. They're not going to give USC any more proponents for USC type of football, politics anymore. USC was apparently on board and jumped off board once they talked to Michigan. Prior to that, they were on board.
With the
public capital deal, they were on board. And then suddenly jumped off board after the Michigan game. And they believe that people, or the Wizard believes, I should say, believes that people at Michigan got in the ear of USC to get them to pull away from the deal at the last minute as well. There is a fear among Ohio State and other teams in the Big Ten. They don't want to give the West Coast another voting member. Right now, Ohio State has an advantage in voting members. They've got 13. They can pass anything they pretty much want outside of public capital because they have 13 votes. And those votes are everybody excluding Michigan and the 4 West Coast teams.
No way. Wow.
They do not want to give the West Coast any more power than they absolutely have to. And they believe the only team that they'd be willing to accept from the West Coast at this point is Stanford.
Yeah.
And that is because Stanford would probably vote Stanford and wouldn't necessarily vote with the 4 West Coast teams. They believe they would vote as an independent entity. They would not vote with the 4 West Coast teams as a block. It would be a safe ad. It would be a beneficial ad for all parties to get Stanford into the Big Ten Academic Alliance. The Big Ten Cancer Research Consortium would make everybody more money in the conference. Yes, it would make those West Coast teams in Michigan more money too, but they're not going to take another West Coast team. Sorry, he just doesn't believe that they would take a West Coast team at this point. They're pissed at Michigan. Lots of teams are pissed at Michigan. There are teams that are pissed. There are schools that are pissed at USC too, because USC was apparently on board and decided to offload at the last minute. And again, the Wizard believes, and people in Columbus believe, that was caused by Michigan. That Michigan is a direct cause. What's
Michigan trying to do here? I mean, just
Michigan is in chaos. Michigan's in chaos. They don't have a president. They've got a board of regents who are self-serving.
Yeah.
Every regent is out for themselves in this matter. Some of them want to increase their political profile for future campaigns. But yeah, he doesn't think that you're going to get a West Coast edition. If you get an edition, it's going to be Virginia, North Carolina. It's going to be either Georgia Tech, Miami. The only West Coast edition you could possibly add would be Stanford.
I understand.
Utah would vote with USC.
Yes.
Colorado would likely vote with USC. Either one of the Arizona schools would vote with USC.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot give USC more power.
it doesn't seem like it's fitting very well with USC in the Big Ten.
It's not. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that because this is the first real obstacle that's come up. But I think the Big Ten is less annoyed, or I should say the 13 out of 18 votes are less annoyed that USC decided to go that way and more annoyed when USC decided to go that way. Why would you throw up a roadblock last minute?
Like, what is USC trying to hatch with Michigan?
I don't know that USC is necessarily trying to hatch anything with Michigan. I think certain Michigan people got in their ear and told them, yeah, you should be getting tier 1 payments, which I don't necessarily disagree with. And the Wizard doesn't necessarily disagree with. He thinks that's the truth too. He thinks USC should be getting tier 1 payments with Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah.
But they had agreed not to originally, and then they came back and said, okay, we have an issue with that. But they only had that after the Michigan game, after, certain people had talked to certain people within Michigan's envelope of power, if we'll call it
so
that.
To sum it up, there's concern that USC and the West Coast schools will get too much power and the voting blocks will be lost.
If you give them one vote,
if you
remember,
get any other
if you give those 4 West Coast schools and Michigan one vote, they can block everything.
Yeah, they can filibuster you.
They can filibuster you. They can block anything you want to do. Again, the public capital deal has to be unanimous. That's a has to be unanimous vote. It's not a has to be unanimous vote. Expansion.
Realignment.
Yeah. Expansion.
13 votes.
Ohio State has 13 votes. They can go get whoever they want right now. And guess what? These other schools in the Big Ten, they're not going to oppose Ohio State. They're not. Because Ohio State said, we're with you, ride or die, till 2046. Michigan said no. USC said no. So if you're a Michigan State, if you're a Minnesota, if you're a Rutgers, if you're an Indiana, if you're a Purdue, who are you going to ride with? Well, you're going to ride with the team that wants to ride with you. And Ohio State said, yes, we'll do it, even with an extension of the grant of rights to 2046. We will do this, even though we actually lose out more value-wise than any other team in the Big Ten. We will do this with you, and we will ride with you till 2046. Michigan said no. USC said yes, and then no. I mean, it boils down to simply that. Sorry.
What about the travel issues though? Like the real travel issues with these.
They don't care. At this point, those schools don't care. If USC was that worried about travel issues and these West Coast teams were so worried about travel issues, they would have put pressure on Michigan to get this done. They would have put pressure on USC to not speak up and change their mind at the last minute.
Yeah.
They didn't do it. So, I mean, the Big Ten feels like they can't trust any of those 4 West Coast schools right now, especially USC.
Yeah.
Especially USC. And they're not going to add somebody who could vote with them and give them a block of 5 teams that could block everything that they want to do moving forward.
Wild.
You add Virginia, you add North Carolina. They're not worried about where their votes are going. Those votes are not going with USC and Michigan. You add Georgia Tech, you add Miami. You're not worried about where your vote's going. It's not going with Michigan or USC. You add Stanford. You might be a little worried, but you're less worried based off of how much money they would add to the conference and the Big Ten Academic Alliance and Big Ten Cancer Research Consortium.
Yeah, they do their own thing.
They do their own thing. They're as close to an independent school as you can get without being independent. Everybody else, both Arizona schools, Colorado, Utah, they're afraid those schools would vote with USC or give USC a stronger voting block.
Well, that's 100% true. Like, especially for, like, as the Utes.
Yeah, Utah would vote with USC. They would. West Coast has conquered territory. USC is lucky the Big let them keep their wives. Durex and skin over Trojans for that real feeling.
Dude. Gee. Let him cook. Let him cook.
He's my best friend. He's my pal. He's my homeboy, my rotten soldier.
You know what Laszlo was talking about there. I've always been a lifestyles man myself. So, but yeah, they've conquered the West Coast. Why would they give the West Coast any more power? They're not looking to. And everybody in the Big Ten has a newfound respect for Ohio State, that Ohio State was ready to ride or die with them. And Michigan, because Michigan has a dysfunctional board of regents where everybody is looking out for themselves first and foremost, and the university second, and the conference third.
It's just odd that Michigan would go rogue like this.
No, it's not.
I guess. I mean, you've known the Big Ten politics.
If you know the Big Ten, you know this. The last thing Big Ten or Michigan wants is anybody challenging, anybody getting a leg up in the Big Ten.
And so
what Michigan does not want.
Michigan's concerned that this deal, this private public capital deal, would equalize the playing field.
Yeah, would level the playing field.
Yeah.
Which it would. I mean, there's a lot of schools out there right now that are hurting for money, even in the Big Ten, even with that big media deal.